Well, welcome everybody. Well, I think we'll just go ahead with the presentation. And I think we've got some people having an issue coming in. So thank you for joining today. We will record this and then I use some sound bites on YouTube. If you've got questions, just chuck them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. But today is really about the next one on the master plan series. So if you haven't seen them before, they will be on the YouTube channel. And last week we covered over the importance of preparing your financials, which is obviously really important. This week we're going to focus on the legal considerations when selling your business. So just checking the chat. Great. So understanding legal aspects is really important in the sales process, obviously, to ensure that your interests are covered and you minimise the risks, because I've seen a few problems with this before, and it's really important to ensure a smooth transaction by making sure all of the legal considerations are in place. So example, I work with a lady, Samantha. So she had she was a very successful e-commerce entrepreneur, and she learned firsthand the importance of addressing legal considerations when she decided to sell her business. So she realised the risks and actually got a legal team. She found a really good solicitor who was used to e-commerce transactions, and so she was able to make sure that the IP was covered, and negotiate some really favourable terms in a sales agreement. So I think we'll give some examples as we go through of other people, but it's really key to make sure that your legal sides are covered. So having been part of about 70 transactions, I've not been personally involved in drawing up any of the legal requirements. I certainly wouldn't do that. And I think it's really important that you have the right team of legal advisors in place. So they will help to protect your interests and minimise risks and ensure that you comply with all the legal sides of things. But the important thing is drafting, reviewing and negotiating key legal documents and agreements. I think if you haven't been through a business transaction, particularly if you're selling your business, it's really important to have that support. And as you go through, you'll understand more of the value of working with them. Michael had a software company, and so he struggled to find the right fit when he was looking for legal counsel, and then he was recommended somebody who had done quite a lot of technology transactions. So they were able to give him specific guidance on the process, and in particular, because the transaction was multi-million, they were brilliant at actually structuring the deal to maximize the tax efficiency, and get some really favorable terms in terms of the upfront payment and the subsequent payments, and ensuring that those were supported. So finally, obviously, with the tech company, there's often a lot of IP, so they helped him to make sure that the IP was registered, and that increased the value of the business. So he was able to get a nice successful sale, and something that's paying him over the next few years, as well as a good payout initially, so to minimise the tax. So what are the key legal documents of the sale process? I always think it's important to start with the non-disclosure agreement, and to protect all your confidential information. Obviously, when you're selling your company, you should probably have a large number of interested parties. And if you don't, you probably not marketing your business well enough for the sale. You can do that for a broker, but you can also do it yourself, and we'll be covering marketing your business for sale in 2 weeks, in 2 weeks' time. So do make sure that you've got a non-disclosure agreement in place to keep your confidential information confidential. It's very often the case that people who are selling their business, some of the people sniffing around will be your competitors. So you need to make sure that those agreements are in place to try to protect basic information that you'll give out initially before you do the due diligence on those people, to make sure they're not your competitors. Once you're happy with that, then the solicitor will help you draw up your letter of intent, which outlines the terms of the sale. So whether it's payment, how much the payment is, whether money's up front or whether it's on earn-out or deferred consideration. So it's really the top line details there. Once you've been through the due diligence and found out all the grisly details, then you really need a detailed purchase agreement, and that might be an asset purchase agreement or a share purchase agreement, and your solicitor can advise on that. And then you've obviously got to think about, you know, employment and non-compete agreements for key personnel. Hopefully by the time you get to sell your business, you would have made yourself redundant in the business, because otherwise it devalues the cost of your business if you can't be replaced easily. But there's clearly going to be other people in your business that are really important. So it's your solicitor is going to be fantastic at actually helping you to engage with your key staff members, with the buyer as well, to ensure that they stay on. And often it's good for the buyer to be persuaded to craft in some sort of bonus for those people to stay on, although a lot of sellers will provide that as well. Finally, there's also the consideration of lease agreements. So with whether you're going to be selling your business with a freehold, for example, if you've got an office or a manufacturing facility, or a leasehold, there's still lots of agreements. And in fact, if it is a leasehold, because you've got to novate contracts or sort out new contracts and terms with the freeholder, it can often be a little bit more complicated. So it's something that needs to be planned well in advance. So you've got to understand the purpose and implications of each of these documents here, to ensure that you can really have a smooth transfer. I worked with Jennifer, and she had a manufacturing business. So we got a really good legal team for her, that was able to negotiate the key legal agreements for her business sale. She began with, as I said before, in this example, she got all the NDAs signed to protect the sensitive information shared during the due diligence process. And that was particularly in her manufacturing, some key processes that were novel to her. And then the solicitor was able to help her shape the letter of intent at the beginning, which served as a foundation for her final purchase agreement. And then they customised employment and non-compete agreements for the key employees that she'd identified. So that was able to ensure a smooth transition and protect Jennifer's interests afterwards. Jennifer had quite a lot of money tied up in an earn-out. So as she wasn't going to be there for very much of the time, she really wanted to make sure that those targets were hit. So it was fundamental that even though she wasn't there, that her key team members were, to ensure that she was able to get that signed over. Okay, so looking at the structure of the sale, this is really one of the most important things that you can do. There's two primary structures, which I mentioned earlier, which is an asset sale and also a share sale. They've each got their own legal and tax implications, and your solicitor can really help you work through what is best for you. You evaluate the pros and the cons of each structure and choose one that best aligns with your goals and circumstances. This is so important when it actually comes to looking at what happens with your proceeds and how to minimize your taxes and limit potential liabilities. So with a asset sale, you tend to pass a lot of liabilities on. With a share sale, you can get a lot of indemnities and covenants against those liabilities, so that can be quite useful. So Robert had a really successful retail chain, and he spent quite a lot of time considering with the solicitors whether he would be better doing as an asset or the share purchase. And eventually they decided that they'd go down the asset sale structure. The benefits to Robert were that he was able to sell specific assets of the business while retaining others. So that was great for him because it gave him some greater flexibility and tax efficiency. I keep on talking about tax, but it's so important to get your sales structure right, to optimize that and make sure that all the money that you've worked for all the years doesn't go straight to the tax man. So by structuring the sale as an asset purchase, Robert was also able to minimise his exposure to certain liabilities and negotiate more favourable terms for the sale. It's really important to pay really close attention to these documents and find the right structure for your sale, and that's where your legal team will really come in. I've got loads and loads of other examples that I can share with you if anyone wants more detail. Now moving on to my favourite subject, having been through so many transactions, is due diligence. And this today, as we're doing a legal part, I'll focus on that side of it. So preparing for your legal due diligence in your sale process is critical, because you want to identify and address potential risks and liabilities that could actually impact the sale going ahead or not. So what your buyer will look at is looking at the contracts that you have, the leases, the agreements, and also the assignability and potential issues. So for example, if you have a lease on the property your business operates in, it's making sure that the landlord is happy to either novate the contracts or create a new contract, which is good for the buyer. You've also got to ensure that you've got compliance with applicable laws and regulations, and that varies massively depending on what industry that you work in. But finally, one of the things that buyers are really sensitive about is potential liabilities, and that might be outstanding legal claims and disputes. So earlier I was talking about veterinary, and that's one of the key ones to make sure that you get the right protection, because, for example, there will be situations where owners who have lost their pets may come back and try and sue the business for a death that they think is not expected. So it's really important to ensure that you look at those liabilities within the business, and as a seller, try to ensure that those are covered retrospectively, because the buyer will be looking for that. I'll give you another example, actually. Maria had a marketing agency, so she wanted to make sure that everything was ticked in terms of the due diligence there. And so before she went through the sales process, she checked with the solicitor all of the client contracts and vendor agreements and her employee contracts to identify any issues and liabilities. And she ended up having to update all of the employee contracts because they were out of date. So that was a work that she did beforehand to make her business more saleable. She was very transparent with the buyer that she selected, and that really helped to build the trust in that relationship. And so the sale actually moved forward a lot quicker than expected, just because she'd done that work beforehand and been very open about it. So it's something to consider when you're selling your business. Next, I'll move on to intellectual property considerations. I'm not an expert in this area, but I have got a network of very good IP specialists who can cover this. And this is, I think, is really even more important these days when we've got a lot of our work is in tech. So a lot of the tech companies I've worked with, we've done an awful lot to make sure that we can get anything we can covered with IP. It's difficult to do when it's a tech business to show that significant difference, but it's definitely worth the investment because it can really increase the value of your business. So if your IP assets are amongst the valuable components of your sale, it's really important to identify those and protect those, and ensure that when transferring that IP, which might be something like trademarks or patents or copyrights, that you've really got that covered legally. It's critical legal consideration in the sales process, and your buyer will want to make sure that they're buying the right things. I'll give an example there. When Jo Malone sold her perfume business on, they didn't buy the name, so she was able to go back and use her name, although they were obviously trying to use that as well. So it's very important to see what you want to keep and what you want to sell on, and your buyer will be, if their legal team's any good, will be looking through this in detail. So make sure your IP's really properly registered and protected, and that will help you ensure against any potential infringement claims or risks. So any good solicitor, and I would advise you to get somebody who's experienced in your sector, so you can really help to, he or she will help you to develop a strategy for valuing and transferring your IP assets to maximize their value, and also to, most importantly to me, protect your interests afterwards. David was another tech guy that I worked with, and so he knew that although the business wasn't generating a lot of money, that the company's patents and trademarks were a key driver of the valuation of his business. So he worked really closely before he marketed his business for sale with his legal team, and they conducted a thorough IP audit. So they made sure all the patents and all the trademarks were properly registered and up to date. They also made sure that through the legal due diligence and the negotiations, that the transfer of the rights to the buyer was part of the sales agreement, and included provisions for the continued use of certain IP by David for a specified period post closing, because he really wanted to make sure that he had some income, so he kept some of that IP as part of the deal. It's really important to make that clear in the contracts. So by proactively addressing those IP considerations, David was able to showcase the value of his company's intangible assets, which made the valuation a lot higher, and also made the sale of the business a lot more desirable. So he got a lot more buyers once he was able to state that point of difference. Okay, so employment law considerations. I use I have several different spreadsheets that cover all the different areas of due diligence and what needs to be checked on the employment law considerations, and those are available on the Sales Success Circle, our membership site, for free. But let's look at this in a little bit more detail, because the first one there is reviewing and addressing employment contracts. I bought a few care businesses where the employees are not actually employees. They might be on other terms or 0-hour contracts. So it's really important to try to make sure that your employment contracts are up to date. They cover all of the latest employment regulations, and this is really cheap and easy to do these days, because there's so many companies that are offering these services, and also a lot of the work can be done by AI these days to review and see where the missing points are, providing your prompting is good enough. I would advise, if you're not sure, use an HR consulting business to if you haven't got a solid HR department. So you want to address the employment contracts and the non-compete agreements and ensure that there's compliance with UK employment laws and regulations. The other thing that's really important, and Aki can contest to this from a veterinary perspective, is making sure that those transitions and communications are really good. So my preference is to have an inner circle of people within your team that you can really trust, that are part of that transaction, but not to spook your team by saying that you're selling your business before you're ready, you're just about to transact, because otherwise very often you'll lose your best people, and you'll lose the value of those people to the business, because they'll think without you the business may fail, or they may not like whoever is going to take over the company. So the way that you communicate with your employers is really important, and you really have to think carefully about that in advance whilst you're going through their employment contract reviews. And it's often good to do, if you don't already do it, to make sure that you've got an annual review that's up to date, so you're more aware of what potential changes are in their agreements. So communications are really important. Once your inner circle know, they need to be informed quite openly about what's happening and what's going forward and their role in it. And when then you you move that to the whole of your employees, it's really important to get them to feel confident and that they can come and talk to you at any time about that. The solicitors themselves are really good for being able to address any potential layoffs and terminations in compliance with applicable laws. But normally you won't be making the layoffs yourself. That might be something that the buyer will consider when they come in. That's unless you decide to keep some of your company, and then you'll need to see who you divide up and whether you need new contracts for those people. But it's really important to work with an experienced solicitor to ensure all the employment-related matters are handled properly and in compliance with the UK laws. So I work in healthcare very often, and I work with Sarah, who founded a nice healthcare services business. But she'd done a lot of work in the year or so before we met to ensure that she took a lot of holidays and was equipping people within the business to run the business for her. But she knew that retaining those key people was going to make a huge difference in terms of the success of the business, so post-sale. And because she was tied into an earn-out, this was essential. So she worked with her solicitor to review all of the contracts, all the non-compete documents were put in there, and she ensured that there was enforceable and transferable to the new owner, which made the new owner really happy, because it saved them a lot of time and effort on their due diligence and cost, of course. Her solicitor also advised her on compliance with employment laws and helped her to navigate sensitive employee communications through the sale. So as I say, on the sales success circle, we have a lot of templates that you can use for your employee communication. But if you get a good solicitor, they are also able to help you with that at a cost. So address these in advance, the employment law considerations, and Sarah did that. So she ended up having a really stable workforce because they felt they were part of that journey, and that was really key to not only her having a successful transaction and a sale, but getting those earn-out bonuses in subsequent years. Okay, next on to compliance and permits. Clearly working in healthcare in particular, there's a lot of considerations from a regulatory perspective, but I thought it was important to put a slide in about this. Depending on your industry and its location, your business might be subject to regulations and permit requirements. So you need to make sure that all of those through the legal process are identified and ensure that all the necessary licenses and permits are up to date. And also you probably need your solicitor to help you with this, but to make sure that they're transferable. Finally, compliance is really important. So if you've got a body that you're registered with for your work, it's really important to ensure that the compliance is there. I'll give an example in care. In care, they're registered with CQC, the Care Quality Commission. If and nurseries are, and a lot of healthcare situations are. If you've got poor results in your compliance, it's really not worth you selling your business, I would say, because unless you've got a good or outstanding a required improvement rating on one of your key lines of inquiry for that particular regulation will mean that the value of your business is absolutely plummets, because it will be more difficult to get new clients into that business. So it's really important to do this area just to make sure that the timing of your sale is right to maximize the value. So John had a manufacturing, I'll move away from healthcare. John had a manufacturing company. So regulatory compliance is obviously really important in manufacturing as well. And he was concerned about the HSC, the health and safety regulations. So he brought in a legal team that was used to working with manufacturing and health and safety considerations. And they did an audit and found there was quite a few areas of his business that didn't really do very well, and they needed to update some of there was a couple of violations, and he needed to update a couple of his licenses. So we resolved all of those issues, and made sure that everything was transferable, and the potential buyers could see that there was a minimisation of the regulatory risks and liabilities. So he attracted a lot more interest, and his initial valuation, he got about 30% more. So it was definitely worth the time and the minimal cost of going through that audit process. Okay, so negotiating, finalising the purchase agreement. I always say at this juncture, people who are selling their business often only sell their business once. A few lucky people do it a few times, but you're up against people who might have bought 100 or more businesses, and it's very often, to me, like putting your 5-year-old who's just done one width of doggy paddle, sending them off to the Olympics. So this is really about trying to even the playing field and make sure that you know what to expect. And negotiating and finalising the purchase agreement is something, if you're not experienced at it, you need to help with. That might be through a broker, that might be through an agent, that might be through a mentor, or your solicitor can also help you with that. Your purchase agreement is the cornerstone of your business transaction. So you've got to make sure that the terms and conditions and obligations for both the buyer and yourself are really put in place very clearly. It's a complex document, the SPA, and you want to make sure that you use a legal professional to advise with that. Because it can run to hundreds of pages, and even for small transactions, it can be at least 60 pages long. So make sure that you get a solicitor to help you with the purchase price and the payment structure and any contingencies. Of course, most people out there buying businesses at the moment will want to make sure that they can spread the cost. And so don't expect to sell your business and walk away with the full money on day one. It's quite realistic for that fee to be spread over 3 years. And that might be just as deferred consideration, where maybe you take half up front and you take the next half over three years. Or it might be linked to business performance. Although a lot of buyers, if they've got any sense, will link it to business performance. But that's why you need to make sure that you've got a friend on your side to run through that and ensure that you're getting what you expect to, and you understand the risks of that. Work closely with your legal team, and then you can ensure your interests are protected. And that the final agreement that you come to, that big hefty document, aligns with your goals and expectations. And you also want to make sure that any risks and liabilities are covered in that with covenants within that contract. Emily had an e-commerce business as well, and so she was really concerned about the finalisation of her sale and purchase agreement. So she leaned quite heavily on her solicitor, and they were able to really navigate some quite complex provisions. So she went for an earn-out, and so they were able to put that structure in place and ensure her that that was suitable. But sometimes there's a concern that if somebody buying your business doesn't do very well with that business, they may not be able to then pay you the money that they owe you later on for your earn out. So the solicitor will help you to see whether it's possible to put, if it's high risk, to put some money in escrow. So that will be money that's kept with a third party and as a fund, and it's only released when the buyer and seller are happy with that. They also put some indemnification clauses in place, and that was really to protect the buyer and make the buyer happy that they wouldn't be potentially sued for things that happened while Emily owned the company. So Emily was offered, I think she was offered 30% up front, and the next 70% over 5 years. So she leaned on her solicitor, and he actually got a much better deal for 50% up front. And there was more time for post closing obligations to be dealt with as well. So she had a great legal team who were used to working in that sector, and she was able to really maximise her value and minimise her risks in the transaction, and that's what you should be aiming at. So let's move on to post-closing legal considerations. A lot of people are so relieved because it's such a huge task to sell your business, as people will know. So your post-closing legal considerations are something that you still need to consider, even though you're hopefully sailing off into the sunset, which is exactly what I'm going to do later today. The legal considerations don't stop with the closing of your sale. There's post-closing obligations, and they will include ensuring compliance with the covenants that are put into your sales and purchase agreement, managing your escrow or holdback funds related to indemnification claims, and also addressing any post-closing disputes and claims that rise. So your solicitor will be with you for the long haul. It won't just be about the transaction. You want to make sure that all the contracts and your licenses and your permits are all transferred to your buyer. And so you need to continue working with your solicitor to navigate these post-closing challenges. So Michael had a software company. He encountered unexpected post-closing legal issue. And this was when a customer claimed that the company had breached a contract prior to the sale. Michael's legal team were brilliant. They jumped into action and reviewed the relevant agreements, and working with the buyer's solicitor addressed the claim. So they had a really good indemnification process, and the provisions there that they'd negotiated within the agreement, Michael was able to resolve the matter really quickly with a minimal financial impact, and the buyer ended up happy as well. So this experience reinforced the importance of a strong legal support, not just during the sales process, but it's really important to think about what that's going to look like in the critical post-closing period. So we've covered a wide range of legal considerations today. I've given you a few examples, but it's been quite top line, and I can provide as much more detail as you want. If you are after documents and agreements, the Sales Success Circle has those, and it allows you much more structure to your due diligence, to going through step by step on your intellectual property, employment matters, and post-closing issues. So that it's here to, the Sales Success Circle is there to provide you ongoing support as you and resources as you embark on your journey, and you can sign up for as little as £19 a month on that. But not only that, I will once again say, if you're selling your business, you really want to know what to expect. Depending on the channel that you sell it, you could potentially be offered very unrealistic pricing, and your business will never sell. Unfortunately, 80% of businesses in the UK that are advertised with brokers don't sell each year, and that's really because their business model is such that they get the money for the listings, and they're less worried about the sales. So they often price your business unrealistically. I think the best approach to take is to have a valuation of your business, see where you are, and see what the gap is between that current valuation and where you will really want to be to achieve your retirement goals. And then create a business plan to get to that point, and don't sell your business until you're there, because otherwise you'll end up selling your business and you'll be unhappy. So I will also I'm also able to offer you a free valuation of your business, which will give you a market value at this moment in time, and also 20 to 25 page report I will create, which will advise you on the areas to cover to increase the value of your business. So if you want to discuss any areas of your business selling, please do use the Calendly link in the chat box, and we can set up a quick strategy call to look at your options going forward and whether you want a free valuation of your business. But in the meantime, we've covered a lot in the session today. Does anyone have any questions?